Welcome on in to the All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. Today, the AFL 2025 fixture has been released. It's November 14. It's only got officially fully released about 5 or so hours ago. Obviously, it's kind of been leaked little bits and pieces over the last few days as we prepare for draft week next week. So we're going to do a quick breakdown of each team's schedule for 2025 based on 2024. A look at what's good, what's bad, who's done well, who's done poorly. We're going to also, that's basically all we're doing actually in this one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Plenty of content coming out over the coming weeks. AFLW final series is alive and happening right now, so check out all that content. Also, next week is draft week, so we're going to have at least a couple videos on that. One before the draft, one after, maybe more. We'll see what happens. Without any further ado, let's jump straight into 2025 AFL fixture, and there's all the information. So we have, obviously, every team along the left-hand side, and then throughout the season, who they play. Obviously, we're not going to go through every single match. We're just going to highlight some things here as we go. Obviously, opening round, it's back again for 2025. I don't think it was a great success. Obviously, they got a lot of fans through the doors. I think it has some faults, which they haven't really addressed, in my opinion, in this one. The major one being how short it makes the pre-season for some teams. Obviously, the teams that miss finals, it's fine. They get a long enough break anyway. But the teams like Brisbane, who played all the way to the grand final, I think it's a bit unfair on them. Of the teams playing in that first week, there's only 2 that didn't play finals, and that's Collingwood and Essendon. Oh, and Gold Coast, sorry. So 3 teams didn't play finals, sorry. The rest of them did. So I think they could have done that better. But yeah, once again, opening round is a thing for 2025. Love it or hate it, it is a thing. I'll probably go more into my full thoughts on opening round in another video closer to the start of next season. If we're to look at opening round, first game, Thursday night footy, Brisbane-Geelong. Huge game up at the Gabba. Should be a cracker. Obviously, prelim final rematch. Not at the same ground, but big game to start the season. Hopefully, for Brisbane's sake, they can do better than what they did last year in opening round. Friday night, we have Sydney Hawthorn. That will be an absolute cracker at the SCG. Tough start for the Hawks. Saturday night football, or not night, evening football, 5:15 kickoff. Up on the Gold Coast is Gold Coast Essendon. So the Bombers having an early season start and trip up to the Gold Coast. And then the Sunday game is GWS Collingwood. So same matchup, just different time to the opening round for both of these clubs last year. So that's how the season starts for opening round. Obviously then round 1 is when every other team plays, including the ones that played in opening round. That will start with Richmond-Carlton Thursday night. Friday night is Hawthorn-Essendon at the MCG. So a couple big Melbourne games to kick off the Melbourne AFL season. 2 blockbusters. Obviously Richmond probably not going to be highly fancied come 2025, but still you'd imagine it's going to draw a decent crowd. Saturday we've got 4 games. Geelong-Fremantle down in Geelong. Sydney-Brisbane at the SCG, so Sydney get a couple home games to start the year. Bulldogs North Melbourne to kick off their season at Marvel Stadium Saturday night. Collingwood Port Adelaide at the MCG, and then Sunday will be Adelaide hosting St Kilda, Melbourne hosting GWS, and the Eagles hosting Gold Coast. So as I said, we're not going to go through every game. That's just how we start. We're going to look at strength of schedule shortly, but we'll just highlight a couple other things throughout the season that's worth noting. Round 5 is gather round, so a couple teams as you can see, the blue on the screen, that means it's a neutral game, neither team home game. Obviously, all games in South Australia. Green is home games, so Port Adelaide and Adelaide, obviously playing at home, being that it's in Adelaide. And then two teams that drew the South Australian teams unfortunately have that extra away game. So that's Geelong, who play Adelaide at Adelaide Oval on Thursday night. And it is also Hawthorn, who have drawn Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval on Sunday night. Yes, Sunday night football at 7:20. Be an interesting one. Should be a big game for the Hawks. They've got a reasonably tough start to the year, in all honesty. Then the following round is Easter weekend, so we've got traditional Thursday night game, Brisbane Collingwood up at the Gabba. Good Friday football is North Melbourne Carlton, and then West Coast Essendon over in the west. And then Easter Sunday, Sydney Port Adelaide Bulldogs St Kilda, and then the traditional Easter Monday game, Geelong Hawthorn at the MCG. A week later, so 3 big rounds in a row really, because the round 7 is Anzac Day football. Anzac Day Eve this year is Thursday, which is Melbourne Richmond. Anzac Day, obviously Collingwood Essendon, followed by Fremantle Adelaide over in the west. That could be a cracking game actually, in all honesty. And then obviously there's more games across the weekend. As you can see, orange on the schedule there means they've got a bye, so 10 teams have a bye in opening round, and then the other 8 teams across rounds 2, 3 and 4 clean up all the first buys to get every team even going through, and then every other team, or every team in the AFL, has a bye across the rounds 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16, spread semi-evenly. In round 12 there's only 4 teams have buys, and then round 13 only 2 teams have buys, and then it goes 4. No, I've done that wrong somewhere. I'm missing one team, I think. Am I? I don't know. I can't count. Anyway, spread across the however many weeks it is. 5, 6 weeks. Moving on. Any other interesting things? I guess North Melbourne have sold 2 home games over to the west. So rounds 13 and 14 they're playing over technically home games against West Coast and Fremantle, but I have marked them as red because they're in the west, so technically as well they're also home games for West Coast and Fremantle, so I've given them marked them like that. So North Melbourne on this sheet does have more away games than everybody else. Other things to highlight, I don't know, last round there could be some absolute crackers that might have a bit to say on the final series. Collingwood Melbourne could be huge. Bulldogs Freo, Essendon Carlton, that's a huge finish to the season. Brisbane Hawthorn, another one that could be huge in context of the season. We'll now jump in, so take a screenshot of that. I'll probably post it on social media somehow. I don't know how that will work, but I'll figure out a way to get it posted. Just that's the season. That's how it rolls out. And then if we jump into the next slide, this is the hardest difficulty down to the easiest based on total wins of the teams they play from last season. So who they're playing in 2025 based on the wins from 2024. Does that make sense? I don't know. I think it does in my head. I think I explained it well. Who knows? So 2024 is obviously their finishing position from 2024 after finals. So Brisbane obviously finished 5th on the ladder, won the premiership. So they're number 1 from 2024. As you can see, they have technically the hardest difficulty based on total wins of opponents. 276 wins. So against them, for their opponents. Hardest, obviously, that's just the ranking of most down to the lowest. And then the difference, that means the difference between the difficulty in hardest compared to their 2024 finishing position. So Brisbane, hardest draw, finished first, 0 difference. Fremantle, 10th on the ladder 2024, second hardest in terms of wins, equal with Port Adelaide, -8 difference. So -8 means they're pretty hard done by, in all honesty, whereas a positive number means they've got it pretty well based on that win count. There's obviously a lot more factors that you can take into the thing. There's the ladder position. There's home, away. There's grounds that you're playing at. There's all different things. This is just purely on wins from last season. At the moment, I'll probably do some other things here and there as we go through. But while I run down this list, we'll just mention the teams that each team plays multiple times. So Brisbane, they come down as the hardest difficulty with 276 wins, as I said. Their multiple games against Collingwood, Geelong, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, Sydney, and the Bulldogs. Next up is Fremantle. A few wins less, and they go up twice against Collingwood, Port Adelaide, St Kilda, Sydney, West Coast, and the Bulldogs. So not an easy run for them. In all honesty, pretty rough. Port Adelaide, they finished third on the ladder, so they're about where they should be. Their multiple games, as always, against Adelaide. They've also drawn Carlton, Fremantle, Geelong, Hawthorn, and Sydney. So really tough run there with Sydney, Hawthorn, and Geelong all twice. Will be very interesting, as well as Carlton played finals as well. So 4 teams that played finals, they played twice. North Melbourne, I think, one of, if not the hardest done by team. As you can see, 4th hardest based on total wins against, whereas they were ranked 17th on the ladder. So pretty harshly dealt with here. They play Adelaide twice, they play Carlton twice, they play Melbourne twice, Richmond twice, Sydney twice, and the Bulldogs twice. Why they don't get the Eagles twice is beyond me, but anyway, it is what it is. Next up, we've got the Hawks. Obviously, finished season last year really well, or this season, 2024. So it was always going to be a tougher schedule for them this year, and that's how it's shown. They've got Adelaide, Brisbane, Carlton, Collingwood, Melbourne, and Port Adelaide all twice. So it's not the toughest draw of all time. Obviously, Brisbane, Carlton, Port Adelaide all playing finals last year, whereas Collingwood, Adelaide did not. But still, pretty tough draw. Next up, not St Kilda, GWS. They finished 5th on the ladder. 6th hardest draw, so about roughly where they should be. Their multiple games are Adelaide, Geelong, obviously Gold Coast, St Kilda, Sydney, and the Bulldogs. Essendon, they pretty harshly dealt with here. They finished 11th on the ladder, 7th hardest draw. They've got Carlton twice, Geelong twice, Gold Coast twice, Richmond twice, which is a good one for them, and then Sydney and the Bulldogs twice each. Collingwood is next, sitting roughly where they should be. Adelaide, Brisbane, Carlton, Fremantle, Hawthorn, and Melbourne all twice. Next up, St Kilda, slightly harshly dealt with here. So Fremantle, Geelong, GWS, Melbourne, Richmond, and the Bulldogs all twice. West Coast, really rough here for them. They get a really rough draw, I think, in my opinion. They get Adelaide, Carlton, Fremantle, GWS, Melbourne, Richmond all twice. So they get Richmond, but outside of that, it's not that easy of a draw. Sydney's next, who are arguably the most well-looked after team with Carlton. Their multiple games are against Brisbane, Essendon, Fremantle, GWS, North Melbourne, Port Adelaide. So they get Port Adelaide twice and Brisbane twice. So two of the other 2 top teams probably really from 2024. However, the rest of them didn't play finals. So, I mean, there's benefits and there's negatives, but overall, total wins against is 262, which is more than half the field. Geelong's next, who also technically get a pretty decent run in terms of wins against. Their multiple games are Brisbane, Essendon, GWS, Port Adelaide, Richmond, and St Kilda. Richmond, another team that doesn't get the best draw, in all honesty. It's not terrible for them, but it's still not great. Their multiple games are Essendon, Geelong, Gold Coast, North Melbourne, St Kilda, and West Coast. So they do get North Melbourne, West Coast. It's not the hardest draw of all time. Geelong, obviously pretty good, but outside of that, I mean, it's not terrible draw for them. Just shows how maybe difference there is for these next few teams, how easy their draws tend to be. Adelaide, their multiple games are against Collingwood, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, North Melbourne, Port Adelaide, and West Coast. So a lot of these teams left are playing the North Melbourne's, West Coast, and Richmond's twice. It's just the way it goes. If you get two of them, then you laugh. And I don't know if anyone's got all three, but yeah, you get two of those, you're laughing. Based on that schedule. Obviously, 2025, the teams will be different. Hopefully, for North Melbourne and West Coast's sake, they'll be a lot better. Doubtful Richmond will be, but we'll see what happens. Next up, Western Bulldogs, another team that's really well drawn here. Got some good luck. They do have Brisbane twice, which is the tough one. And then they've also got Essendon, Fremantle, who both obviously missed finals. GWS played finals, finished high on the ladder, so that's a rough one for them. But then they do have North Melbourne and St Kilda twice. Gold Coast finished down towards the bottom, so they're not too massively advantaged here, but slightly are. I've got Adelaide, Brisbane twice, Essendon, GWS, and Melbourne and Richmond twice. So they're the 6 for them. Next up, Carlton, who somehow have just drawn a dream run. Don't understand it. Finished 8th on the ladder last year and were in the top 4 for well and truly over half of the season. But they get Collingwood and Essendon twice. Both of them missed finals. They get Hawthorn twice, which is, granted, a little bit of a tough one. North Melbourne twice. Port Adelaide twice, who played finals. And West Coast twice. So, how that works out, they only get 2 other finalists twice, which is your Port Adelaide and your Hawthorn. They get 2 of the bottom 3 teams in West Coast and North Melbourne twice, and the other 2 teams didn't play finals, so they got a really good run, in my opinion. And then the easiest draw was Melbourne, who did finish 14th, so it's not like they were massively advantaged here, but they have drawn a schedule that should give them a really good chance. They've got Collingwood twice, Gold Coast twice, Hawthorn twice, then they've got North Melbourne, St Kilda, and West Coast twice. So if Melbourne are going to bounce back, they've probably got the right draw for that. Looking at the schedule, that's hardest at the top, easiest at the bottom. If you did go by difference, so most benefited team and most disadvantaged team, biggest benefited teams are your Sydney, your Carlton, your Bulldogs, Geelong. They're the big 4 that have really got a really good draw. The ones that have been really smacked on the head, really. North Melbourne, massively. Fremantle, and who else have we got there? West Coast, pretty rough. Richmond, pretty rough, but I mean, there's only so much you can do when Richmond finished so far down the ladder. And then, Essendon, pretty rough draw as well. St Kilda, not the easiest, but I mean, that's how it is. So that's 2025 schedule. Only come out today. There's still plenty more analysis to do. If I come up with some more interesting stuff, I might release another video. But that's everything for this one. I thank you for tuning in. This has been All Aussie Rules. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Plenty more content coming. Draft week next week. It's a huge week in football for a lot of young players. So come back, check out that content. AFLW Finals is here. We got semi-final weekend coming up tomorrow. The potty will be out tomorrow as well. We're back to 1 episode a week at the moment, but we'll probably go back to 2 for the next couple of weeks. Thanks for tuning in. This is All Aussie Rules. We'll be back very soon. Hope to see you there. Thanks again.